right. It's live streaming. So we're going to continue our look into perceptions today. I'll start with the Namo Tassa and then we'll get right into it. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Sammasambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sammasambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sammasambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sangham namassami. All right. So let's see, we kind of did the looking at perceptions, our sanya, in the kind of the shallow across the suttas last time. And we're going to go deeper into specifically quarrels and disputes and how they boop, 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 get started from our perceptions. And we don't need to get all the way to quarrels and disputes in the sense of what we think of in a global context. However, if I just say quarrels and disputes, looking at our own bodies, there's probably an experience happening. And that experience for me has this kind of ready to fix it or defend it or bring it on, or there's some sort of emotive quality if I've just coming at it from the stream of things where I haven't really been practicing spacious being with, the quality of questioning my perceptions. I just feel the quarrel start to arise, and very often we're off on that track. And our bodies will tell us, I've got a quarrel. There's a bone to pick here. I mean, we talk about it like from the body, there's a bone to pick here. And so backing that up, and I've been doing this repeatedly and repeatedly, the closer to the perceptive awareness I can catch it and question it, or just not give it so much credence, the less likely I'm going to get into this mind-body state that's ready to duke it out. So I'll share my screen, and we're going to go into the Sutta Quarrels and Disputes, and probably just a couple paragraphs from the Honeyball Sutta as well. Okay. And okay, because I've turned the other device off because of the reverb, I just want to double check that what you're seeing is Sutta Central Quarrels and Disputes. Thumbs up? Yes, nod. Yes, great. Good. It's working thus far. Thus is it working. So I'm going to read through the sutta just once. It's from the Sutta Nipata, so it's kind of a poetry style. And this is a yaka coming to the Buddha to ask some questions that are not specific to yakas. Pretty much all beings have these questions. And then we'll unpack it a little bit. And we'll go specifically to the section on perceptions in a little bit more detail. So here's the sutta. It's Sutta Nipata 4:11, if you want to look it up later. Where do quarrels and disputes come from? So this is the yaka asking the questions, and then we'll have the Buddha responding. You kind of just have to tell from the way the speech is coming, who the speaker is, but I'll try to voice it in some way. Where do quarrels and disputes come from? And lamentation and sorrow and stinginess? What of conceit and arrogance and slander too? Tell me, please, where do they come from? Quarrels and disputes come from what we hold dear, as do lamentation and sorrow, stinginess, conceit, and arrogance. Quarrels and disputes are linked to stinginess. And when disputes have arisen, there is slander. So where do things held dear in the world spring from? It kind of sounds like a 2-year-old, doesn't it? Well, what's that? Well, what's that? Well, what's that? And we have all got one of those within us. So where do things held dear in the world spring from? And the lusts that are loose in the world? And where spring the hopes and aims that one has for the next life? What we hold dear in the world springs from desire, as do the lusts that are loose in the world. From there spring the hopes and aims one has for the next life. So where does desire in the world spring from? And evaluations too, where do they come from? And anger, lies, and doubt, and other things spoken of by the ascetic, basically, other things you've talked about, where do they come from? What they call pleasure and pain in the world, based on that, desire comes about. Seeing the appearance and disappearance of forms, a person makes evaluations in the world. Anger, lies, and doubt, these things are too when that pair is present, the pair of the pleasant, unpleasant, or wanting, not wanting. One who has doubts should train in the path of knowledge. It is from knowledge that the ascetic speaks of these things. Where do pleasure and pain spring from? When what is absent, do these things not occur? And also, on the topic of appearance and disappearance, tell me where they spring from. Pleasure and pain spring from contact. When contact is absent, they do not occur. And on the topic of appearance and disappearance, I tell you they spring from there. So where does contact in the world spring from? And possessions too, where do they come from? When what is absent, is there no possessiveness? When what disappears, do contacts not strike? Name and form cause contact. Possessions spring from wishing. When wishing is absent, there is no possessiveness. When form disappears, contacts don't strike. Form disappears? For one proceeding, how? And how do happiness and suffering disappear? Tell me how they disappear. I think we ought to know these things. Like I said, it's a 2-year-old. We want to know. Without normal perceptions or distorted perception, not lacking perception or perceiving what has disappeared, form disappears for one proceeding thus. For judgments due to proliferation spring from perception. And this is the paragraph we'll hopefully give a little more attention to today. Whatever I asked you, you have explained to me. I ask you once more, please tell me that. Do some astute folk here say that this is the highest extent of purity of the spirit? Or do they say it is something else? Some astute folk do say that this is the highest extent of purity of the spirit, but some of them, claiming to be experts, speak of a time when nothing remains. Knowing that these states are dependent and knowing what they depend on, the inquiring sage, having understood, is freed and enters no dispute. The wise, do not proceed to life after life. So if we can get at the root of this, it's way backed out from the quarrel itself down to the perceptive quality and what we're wishing, we can cut through and actually end this whole mass of suffering. So it's quite an amazing sutta. But reading it as poetry, it's like we get the flavor or I get this kind of flavor flow of the questioning and that there are answers. But it takes a little bit to unpack it. So we'll do that next. Okay. Okay, I'm going to try to add in my notes side by side on the screen. We'll see if it works. Let's see if we can do. I'm supposed to be able to go up to, let's see, take this and go up. Nope. One more try and then there we go. All right, so are you seeing a side by side now? Okay, excellent. So here we are with the sutta. I see it with the sutta on my left, and then my notes are on the right. And in this first, so he's questioning, where did the quarrels and disputes come from? And lamentation, sorrow, and stinginess. So I've put the and stuff in italics after the main part of the question. So it's like to get the picture of what's being asked. What of conceit and arrogance and slander too? Tell me, where do they come from? So this will be the kind of the format as we'll have this thing and all of the stuff associated with it. Where does it come from? Question mark. So that's kind of how my notes look. And then there's this one part here that's down a little bit. It's not the first two lines. It says quarrels and disputes are linked to stinginess. So this is an exploration. I suggest spend a whole week on looking at, is there a quality of stinginess when I have a dispute arising? What is it? Stinginess, feel it in the body. Feel that constrictive quality of, I'm holding, I don't want to give, and see what you're making mine and I want to hold on to it. So throughout this next week, I give an invitation to play with this. When there's this like quarreling quality, you may not actually engage in a quarrel or a dispute, but when that quality of, I gotta push back, when that arises, noticing in the body, what does it feel like? Is there this constrictive quality of stinginess pleasant? As the next line says, and when disputes have arisen, there is slander. It's so easy to go from body, mind to mouth. And so really we want to catch it as early as possible in the process. And that's our body-based practices, the mindfulness of the body. What is my body alerting to me right now? So quarrels and disputes are linked to stinginess, and disputes can lead to slander. So backing up to the two lines before, I'll figure out how not to make that jump in future. I think that the screen's got this header that keeps flopping down. One tech question at a time, though. Quarrels and disputes come from what we hold dear, as do lamentation, sorrow, and stinginess. So what we hold dear leads to quarrels and dispute. And the word here, let's see, does the pop-up still work? Yes. The Piya, P-I-Y-A, Piya. That word is what's dear, what's beloved. I queued up. Oops, we're all the way to, oops, I don't get to see the sidebar in this one when I narrow the screen. Okay. Pia. So it's our beloved, what we like, what's agreeable, what's pleasant. It can be our friends or our partners. It's not saying don't have friends or partners, but it's talking about that beloved quality. And when we get caught in that, then we're down the road to what we need to defend. So, quarrels and disputes come from what we hold dear. Because now we want to defend them or we want to acquire it. Okay. So then the question's asked, well, what leads to what we hold dear? And the Buddha replies that they stem from desire. And here the word is chanda. Chanda is a kind of a neutral term. It can be a positive or a negative. It's that wanting quality. But I like how when it gets into this compound word that the Digital Poly Dictionary is calling it having its origin in appetite. For me, that is a quality, the appetite. What do I have an appetite for? That's what I hold dear. If I have an appetite for it, and it doesn't have to be just what I want to eat, but what do I have an appetite for as far as, I want the deer to visit us again today. Whatever. What do I have an appetite for? That is going to lead to things that I hold dear. I start that differentiation process that will trace back further. So desire. And then, of course, it's asked, so where does the desire come from? And then adding on, and I like the adding on here, and evaluations. So I've called that discrimination and judgments. Um, Discrimination, distinction, evaluation, assessment, opinion, my verdict, my conclusion. So, where do these things, these judgments, and then also anger, lies, and doubt, and other things. So, what are these qualities that you've talked about? Desire. So you can see this yaka's got this desire to learn, which is a wholesome desire. But they're also noticing all these other things, the sense they're already kind of getting a clue. There's this judgmental quality that may be underlying things. I judge, I want, I get, I pursue, I don't get, I feel bad. So the we're we've lost our sense of objectiveness and we've just down the track to what we hold dear. So where does this desire come from and all of these other things? And here I'm not so keen on the translation. What they call pleasure and pain, let's see. Based on that, desire comes about. So satang asatanti. Satang, when it's translated as pleasure and pain, I think more of Vedana myself. It kind of throws me a little bit as to what the underlying, so we're not talking about just the feeling tonality of the experience that's included, I think, but there's also something, it's more about what's agreeable, appealing. So actually, maybe I would change this to, here I've got agreeable, but I'm going to put appealing and disagreeable is fine. Appealing and disagreeable. Those, when I'm at that level of that's nice, or yucky, then I will have some desire associated with that. There is another, I'm going to see how it looks on this screen. Yeah, it's okay. It's quite a large spreadsheet here. I'll stop scrolling so you can see it a little bit better. This was compiled, I believe, by Lee Brasington, and I found it online. I'll try to get Mudita to link it in our I was going to say show notes. YouTube notes. I'm not, yeah, you know what I'm talking about. So I'll try to get a link to this as well. And it's lovely. It's got the Pali of this sutta in the leftmost column, and then it has translations from one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight translation. Yeah. And then there's some commentary that Lee Brasington has added at the end. Some of the commentary I can see is a direct take from the notes from these other authors or from the like Visuddhimagga or other commentary. So this is a wonderful table to really spend some time unpacking the words. So the one I was, oh, so here's Pia. And I noticed he picked out a lot of the same, of course, words for chanda, for exploration. And here, satang, asatanti, pleasant, unpleasant, pleasing, not pleasing. I don't, let's see, yeah. I like and I don't like. I think that's a really good way to put this. I like, I don't like. I sounded like I cheated under there. Don't like. So we have these characters, and I find Ayachitananda pleasant. So there you go. Pia. Agreeable, disagreeable, pleasant, unpleasant, pleasure, pain, appealing, unappealing. Oh, okay. So yeah, we're in that ballpark. So what I like about this is that you can kind of figure out which words are most resonant for you. What is the characteristic that when I say that, I'm hoping this summer to do a series of programs like a body-based sutta exploration, where we really do kind of the embodiment of these Pali words and the translations and see what it is that resonates with us so that we can actually clearly see these links within our own experience. So this is probably one of the topics we'll cover in that series if it happens. Okay, so we'll go back to the sutta. We're at appealing and disagreeable leads to desire. And the next stanza in there has another concept that's interesting that I added in. Seeing forms appear and disappear, we make judgments, is the way I put it. A person makes evaluations. So I felt like I wanted to make it a little bit of a stronger evaluation. To me, adds a little bit too much neutrality to it. And so this is just another case of where find the word choice that gives you the body and emotive quality that you can see the clear link between when I see these things, like last week when the deer arose in my side vision. You have to, if you didn't see last week's, you can probably see, I think the video's up there. So this deer appeared, I saw the form, and I made, a judgment. That's a deer. Oh, it's right here at our sutta study. I'm perceiving, and I think I went on for a little while there with the deer. And so seeing forms appear and disappear it's even right at that point where we're off into making some sort of evaluation or judgment. So I added in judging, and I'll put appealing and disagreeable. So really, what is it that leads to the judging of appealing and disagreeable? Let's see, scrolling down. Tell me where they sprint. I must have. Pleasure. Oh, here we are. Pleasure and pain spring from contact. Well, I mean, this one feels like a no-brainer. It's like you have to have some sort of contact, even as it's a mental contact, there's some sort of contact that's happening to have this feeling of it's appealing or it's disagreeable come up. So with contact, there is this beginning of the, do I like it? Do I not like it? Okay. When contact is absent, they do not occur. Okay, yes. So then the question, of course, in the same pattern, so where does this contact come from? And then it's interesting that the Yaka adds also possessions. This is another interesting word. I translated it more as possessiveness. It does mean the physical or relational things themselves, but it's more about the quality also of I have a possessiveness to this relationship or this object. So contact, and he adds on, and what about possessiveness? And so at this point, the Buddha pulls it apart a little bit here, because those two things do go together, but they need a little bit of breaking apart too. So he responds that name and form cause contact. So nama rupa are namancha rupancha. So name, nama, name, nama, rupa, form. Those are what lead to contact. If you didn't have some sort of form with all of the associated mental faculties with it, then there would be no contact possible. And there's the adding in of and wishing. When that's absent, there's no possessiveness. So no wishing, no possessiveness. And notice we've kind of switched from the what leads to this to, whoa, this trajectory is not leading where I want it to go. How do we stop it? And so the Buddha's replying, since the question's been phrased in that negation, how do we, not where did it come from, but how do we stop that from coming up? The Buddha's response is that if we don't wish, then we don't get possessive. If we don't have form, then there's no contact. And the wishing one is another interesting thing to explore. So Icha is the wishing part. Ichaya here. Ichaya, sorry. So let's see if we can put that in up here. Oops. Let's see, I might need the diacritic. Let's see. Yeah. CH. Think I've got it configured. Yes, good. All right, here we are. Icha, wishing, desiring, wanting. And then I like adding in this word longing. This kind of emotive there's that quality in there that links further down the chain to the sorrow lamentation part of things. The longing creates the possessiveness, longing to keep, longing to push away. Okay. So here, the next question. So how do we get this form to stop? How do we get the pleasure and pain to stop? How? Form disappears how? And how do happiness and suffering disappear? And it's kind of strange to think of, happiness disappearing, but this is something that we have grosser forms of happiness and subtler forms of happiness. We have refined forms of happiness. We have, the happiness of release, the relief of refuge. So this is kind of confusing to say, well, how do we want happiness to go away? But this is something that eventually during the jhanas, particularly in the higher stages, where you see the falling away and how much calmer, more beautiful, more peaceful it is to be without the grosser forms of happiness. So the yaka's asking, how do they disappear? I think we ought to know these things. I agree. And then we get to the paragraph that why I went into this sutta in the first place was this paragraph we were talking last week about perceptions. And it's quite a mouthful, this one. Without normal perception or distorted perception, not lacking perception, not perceiving what has disappeared, form disappears for one proceeding thus. For judgments due to proliferation spring from perception. This is kind of what my last 3-week retreat rotated around, was looking at this judgment due to proliferation springing from perception. So what is the perception? Oops, I clicked accidentally on one of my favorite words right now. Proliferation of concepts, papancha sankha. So exploring what is perception, how does it occur, where is the judgment baked into it? Can it be reconditioned? And understanding that this proliferation tendency is what is stopping us from really getting into deeper meditation, into a happier relating. When we're in our form, when we're out in the world, it stops us because we're in this made up obsessive world. So this is what we're going to explore a little further. And then further down in the sutta is just basically the wrap up that, you know, this exploration can lead to the end of, this can lead to Nibbana. So let's see, maybe if I pull it this way, yeah, that'll give us more real estate. So perceptions are kind of at the root of this, and we need to explore them further. So I've just simply taken the text from what's on the left, pasted it here, and exploded these notes that are here. So all of this is from Bhante Sujato, Sutta Central, his translation, the Pali, and then the notes that he's added. So this stanza. Without normal perception or distorted perception, and this is the sanya that we've been talking about, visanya is used for one whose perception is distorted by, and then it gives 3 examples in the suttas and the Vinaya, distorted by grief, by alcohol, or by the 4 distortions of perception, which we'll probably get into more deeply in another week, the distortions of perception. And the sanya is the opposite. So our normal perceptive qualities or our distorted perceptions, and then not lacking perception, not perceiving what has disappeared. So the note is that this verse answers the question of how one is to practice so that form disappears. And I mentioned this before, the jhanas. It describes the process that leads from the 4th jhana to the formless state. This is not yet my experience, but I'm looking forward to it. In a chanda good way, I hope, with maybe some attachment still. Definitely. Okay. Sidebar aside, form disappears for one proceeding thus. For judgments due to proliferation spring from perception. And this is that line that's just so rich. I'm gonna make the font bigger and bold it. For judgments due to proliferation spring from perception. And this is where we'll jump into sutta in the Majjhima Nikaya in a moment. So the comment here is that in the Honeyball Sutta, MN 18, we have the sequence perception, thought, proliferation, then papancha Sanya Sankha. This suggests that papancha causes sankha, as per Bhikkhu Bodhi, Venerable Bodhi. Let's see if we can pull. We looked at this one a little bit last week. Oh, here, I've got it already written down below. Papancha Sanya Sankha, proliferation of opinions, concepts, and constructs, or classification of diverse perceptions. So this is last week I talked about, I've got a label and it's kind of just the base thing, fuzzy, has these darker spots, whatnot. My label says deer. And then I reach into my filing cabinet, old style manila folders, pull it out. All the papers inside come out about what I know about deer and my opinions of deer, my past experience of deer, what I heard the Buddha talk about deer. All of that is in my folder. I'm not yet at papancha. I'm not at where I'm proliferating, but I've pulled up my package of opinions and views and what I, quote, know, what my conditioning has told me and is stored in my folder. And that's my perception. And then my perception, what's in there are the interpretations of what the senses registered. So on contact, there was brown, fuzzy, dark spots, fluffy white at the end. Oh, I interpret that deer, my perception. And along with that comes this package of deerdom. And then papancha is the tendency of the worldling's imagination to break loose and run riot. Unfortunately, I collected some of these. They're paraphrases from other teachers, mostly monastics, I think. And I unfortunately didn't note who the source was. When I come across them again, I'll try to note who the author was on this. It may have been from the Concept and Reality book that I showed last week, or somebody's commentary on the Concept and Reality book. So papancha is a tendency for our imagination to break loose and run riot. It happens a lot. It tends to obscure the true state of affairs with unwarranted deviations that give rise to obsession. And here's my favorite definition right now for nipapancha. And the ni is the negation in Pali. Nipapancha is freedom from obsession. And I've worked with so many people, including all the multitude within my own psyche, my own situation, where there's a hook. We're on that hook. And whenever that person or situation comes into our awareness, you see an email, you see a news article, you see their face, you see them on the street, this whole tonality immediately emerges upon sense contact of seeing or hearing. It could be any of them. So when the sense contact arises, or even a thought of so and so. I don't know necessarily why that particular thought came up. It was just a mind contact, but I grab on, oh, they did such and such to so and so. I have an opinion about that. Maybe we should have. That's the papancha. And then I can get, and I've seen others do it too. It's not just me. The obsessive quality. Every time, in modern terminology, we talk about being triggered. So, triggered, papancha. I'm obsessed. So this is really the root of our practice, is seeing clearly without this grabbing, me, my making, and running off in the mind with. You don't get good meditation. I'm telling you from experience. You do not get good meditation when you are in the realm of papancha, papanchizing. Okay, so I think we've got time to just jump into the Honeyball Sutta, the specific section. And we might have to continue with this and then the other qualities of papancha and sanya next week. So this is found in the middle length discourses, number 18. And this is there's 2 paragraphs in here. We'll look at this one. Judgments driven by proliferating perceptions beset a person. If they don't find anything worth approving, welcoming, or getting attached to in the source from which these arise, just this is the end of the underlying tendencies to desire, repulsion, views, doubt, conceit, the desire to be reborn, and ignorance. This is huge. If you don't find anything worth approving, welcoming, or getting attached to. So I've been really practicing with, I feel a judgment. You can feel the judgment rising even before whether you're a picture-based thinker or a verbal-based thinker, before that image or verbal thing comes into the mind, there's this sense of judgment arising in me. Even before, and the thought will begin to form before it's crystallized. I try to take a breath, become more spacious again, and have the sense of humor that, oh, I'm opening up my filing cabinet. And I've got a mess of papers that are, ready for me to, get really ridiculously creative with. And so I really, really focus on finding this is a perception and not moving into, do I approve, welcome, get attached, want to push away? Just this is arising. It's like this. Holding it like this. And I can bring in the emotive qualities that I want to be present, like the Brahma-viharas, the loving kindness, the friendliness, the equanimity. I can have joy in what I'm seeing rather than jealousy. So I can make a choice about the response tone I have. And I don't go down the rabbit hole of I want, I like, I don't like. Okay. I do want to make sure we have time for questions. This part's important, so we will continue a little bit. It goes through all of the senses. We'll do sight, but also know it applies to everything down to the mind. Eye consciousness arises dependent on the eye and sights, so the capacity to see and something to see. The meeting of the consciousness, the ability to see, and the sight is contact. And contact is a condition for feeling. What you feel, you perceive. What you perceive, you think about. What you think about, you proliferate. So this is where the papancha comes in. What you papanchinate, proliferate, is the source from which judgments driven by proliferating perceptions beset a person. This occurs with respects to sights known by the eye, past, future, and present. So any of our senses, it occurs with respects to what I experienced before, what I think I will experience, as well as what's going on right now. We got a package deal every time we sense something. Let's see here. So this, and I'll share this document in the notes so you can look at it more fully. Again, this is just the, if we were to go to Sutta Central to the Honeyball Sutta, these would be the notes that pop up when you click on the little blue asterisk if you have the notes feature on. So that's what this note is. So this is Mahakachana, and I've talked about this one before. He's replying to something that the Buddha had talked in brief, and he's unfolding and unpacking it. And what's really interesting to spend time with is, where are we an agent of action, and where are we acted upon? You know, when has the train left the station? So we've got the contact. There is expressed as a noun, and it leads to the next, like dominoes. So the question marks I had, doop, 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 doop. And then we're down the rabbit hole. But at feeling, there's a pivot, and it switches to verbs. And this is really interesting to have this sense of there's an active quality. There's a force that motivates desire, even though desire itself is left unstated, but there's this desiring. And the verb, let's see, assuming an agent who's feeling, perceiving, thinking, and proliferating. But with proliferating, the syntax changes again. The agent is fully manifest as the person. So this is where our selfing comes in, who tragically is no longer the subject in control of the process, but the hapless object of the swarm of judgments that beset them. How many times have we done that? It's like, I can't stop thinking this. I can't stop, why am I still going on about this? Oh. So this is where we become beset. I love that word. I'm beset. Yeah, so then it goes into the origin story. So this one, again, I want to do a body-based exploration of when we feel as if we're the agent, and when we feel as if I have no control over this, and is either true or not, and to help us kind of see clearly and unpack this linkage that happens. So it goes through all of these senses. Okay, yeah, we're not going to go into this part. I'll leave that for you to look more at the etymology. So, oh good, we still have a little bit of time. I'm going to stop the screen share. Are there any questions or comments relevant to this topic you would like to have on recording? And then we'll stop the recording, and we can have further, more personal discussion if you wish after the recording, and it's all optional. Yes, please, Adrian.
Yeah, thank you, Ayya. Another great sutta. I was wondering if there's a big difference between the wishing and the desire on those two lists, or if they're more synonyms of each other.
That's a really good question. I think I'd need to look at the Pali in the Honeyball Sutta to make sure it's the same, but I did see that there's two words here being used. One is the chanda, the which I said is kind of a neutral, but can easily be hijacked into it's the impulse of it. The ichea is more of for me, I feel that term is more of a loose, well, I wish. There's a whole sutta about one need not wish. Actually, I'm not sure which Pali word is used. They're close enough. There's some synonymness to them. I don't know. I think you'd need to do your own exploration of, like, is there a depth of clinging or attachment? Is this a wholesome wish? Is this a motivation that's moving me toward? So it's more about looking at the qualities of supportive, not supportive, than which of the two words is being used. I think they're kind of used as synonyms in the suttas. Good question. Other questions or comments while we're on recording? Okay, well, we'll wrap up the recorded part. We'll just do homage to the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, and then I'll stop the recording. And we can talk further if you wish. If you wish, if you desire. Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one. Homage to the teachings. And homage to the Sangha. We are so blessed to have this coming down to us this many, many years after the Buddha. All right, I will stop the